Okay, I'm going to talk you through some techniques and cover a start-to-finish workflow scenario for editing a portrait image. We'll start with the raw file then, which opens in the Develop persona. Now generally I don't tend to do a lot of editing during this stage. Instead I like to get a flat image without any clipped tones or detail and do most of the adjustments in the photo persona. With that in mind, let's turn on the clipping indicators up here. Now we'll see the catch lights in the eyes are blowing out. And we've also got some tones in the hair here, which are clipping too. So to solve the catch light clipping, what we can do is enable shadows and highlights down here and just drag highlights to the left. Then to stop these tones here from clipping, we can also just drag saturation down slightly. Now, if I just fit to screen using Command 0 or Control 0 if you're on Windows, we've got a very flat image, but this is great because I like to make all the tonal adjustments later whilst doing the main editing. Now, over on the Details panel, what I like to do is just add a tiny amount of luminance noise reduction. About 15% will do. Then finally, I'll enable the Profiles option down here. And on my output profile, I'm going to choose ROM RGB. This just gives us a wider color space to work in compared to sRGB. There's no performance penalty, but when exporting, we'll have to remember to set our embedded profile to sRGB, which will ensure photo converts back to it. And that's it for the raw development. So I'll just click Develop. So then, we're starting with a very flat image. Now to counteract this and give us a punchier result to basically look at as we work, I'm going to add a brightness and contrast adjustment from Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and Brightness Contrast Adjustment. Okay, so I'll bring the brightness up to about 50% or thereabouts, and also increase the contrast to about 25%. That's fine, so we'll close that dialog. Let's start with retouching then. I'm going to use frequency separation to remove some spots, blemishes, and a couple of other marks on the model's face. So to set up frequency separation, Photo has a very useful filter for that. If we select the background pixel layer, then go to Filters and Frequency Separation, we have a preview of the high frequency layer and the low frequency layer. Now the defaults are usually pretty good for most general retouching purposes, so we'll leave them as they are and click Apply. Okay, so our background pixel layer has been split into high and low frequency layers now. So what I prefer to do is actually turn off the high frequency layer, select the low frequency, and just work on the tonal detail first. So let's start down by these spots here. And a perfect tool to remove these is the Blemish removal tool, which if we click hold on the flyout here, is this tool. Okay, so we can either just single click these areas, or we can click, hold and drag to define the area we want to replace with, like so. So we can just basically work our way around and use a combination of both these methods. Like so. Okay. Next, we'll sort out the little scar mark, which we can see here. And to sort this out, we'll use the patch tool. So once again, click hold on the flyout here and select the patch tool. And how this works is you click drag around an area to define it as the area you want to patch over, like so, then release. And when we move our mouse round the screen, we can choose the area to replace it with. So what I'll do is find an area of the cheek up here, like so. And the patch tool also does some tonal blending. So I can click once to define that area, and then if I'm happy with the result, I can just click off again to complete the patch operation. We can also do it for the scar mark here as well. It's not actually a dimple or a line, it's actually a scar. So once again, we can click drag around the area we wish to patch, like so. And once again, we'll sample an area from up on the cheek, like so. Click off again, and there we go. So whilst we have the patch tool selected, it's also good for just lessening the shadows either side of the nose here. To demonstrate this, I can just go in and drag over the area I want to patch, like so. Come out again, and well, we could choose any area that looks good to us really. We could even choose a bit of the nose. Let's try that. So I'll click once, then click again. That looks pretty good, but let's say we're not happy with that result. Rather than try and patch over it again, all we need to do is go to Edit and Undo Deselect. And we're back at that previous stage where we can move the cursor around to define the area to patch with. So I'll try over here, click and click again. Much better. Okay, so now we just need to do this area. I'll just click drag over it like so. Try that. Maybe I'm not happy with that either. So again, I'll go to Edit, Undo, Deselect. Let's try the nose again, because that was fairly successful. Let's try here and deselect. There we go, good. Next, I'm going to focus on the lips. I want to remove the glare from the flash gun. So we might call this cheating a little bit, but actually I like to use the Inpainting brush to tackle areas like this. So once again, on the flyout here, I'll select the Inpainting brush tool. I'll perhaps reduce the brush width a little by using the left bracket key. And just brush over this area. There we go, quite a nice result there. And then up on the model's forehead, we have a slight scar mark just here. Now for this, I'll use the healing brush. So once again, click hold on the flyout, healing brush tool, and also I want to make sure the hardness is at 0% for a nice soft brush edge. I'll increase the brush width using the right bracket key as well. And to use the healing brush, it's very similar to the clone brush if you've ever used that. You simply Alt or Option click on an area to define where you want to heal from, and then brush over the area you're healing. Okay, so unlike the clone brush, the healing brush also performs tonal matching, and as you can see, it's worked really well. So we'll also do that to remove the frown marks here. Again, I'll use a smaller brush width, Alt or Option click on this area, and just brush down, go again, brush up, then this one, sample from here, brush down like so, and perhaps a little bit over here as well. Oh no, I've healed this little pink spot mark, so actually I'll sample from these areas and go over those, and there we go. I've just spotted as well this little spot on the nose, so sample from here, heal, done. Okay. Now something that's a little trickier is the redness on the chin here. So to try and make it match with the rest of the skin tone here, what we'll do is click hold on this flyout here and choose the color replacement brush tool. Okay, now again we want to take the hardness down on this for a soft edge and increase the brush size. Now I'm just going to switch across to the color panel here so you can see what's happening. Basically what I'll do is sample a color from the surrounding skin tones here. So I can Alt or Option click and hold down click whilst I sample a sort of a pinkish tone here. Okay, and that is instantly assigned to the active color here. Now then, if I start to brush over an area here, so I define the color to replace and keep brushing, we'll see it's doing a pretty good job of replacing that sort of reddish skin. However, if we zoom out, yeah, okay, that looks really odd. So let's try again. We'll go to Edit, Undo, And this time what we'll do is take the brush opacity down to about 50%. And this should enable us, if we then click, drag and brush over again, to lessen the strength of the colour replacement. Okay, I'll just have another look at that. Yeah, that looks better, much better. Okay, so far so good. Now we're going to move on to the high frequency layer, so we'll select it and also check it to enable it again. Now we don't have as much work to do here, but one thing I will do is get rid of the glare that's present on the textural detail here. So again, I'll use the Inpainting brush tool for this. But I'll set the hardness to 100%, because we need a hard edge brush to retain all the fine detail in the high frequency layer. So with that set, we can just brush over these areas. And then we have some random bright parts on the skin as well. So I'll reduce the brush width and just single click to just remove a few of these, not all of them, just a few of them that are quite prominent. Say over here and over here. Okay, and perhaps a few above the lip as well. There we go. And on the lip. Okay, yeah, I'm done now. No, I'm not. There we go. Now next, I want to try and tone down some of these harsh or sharp lines on the model's face. Now using the blur tool could be a viable option in some cases, but I don't really like to lose fine detail, so I prefer instead to select the clone brush and bring the hardness up to 100%. So for example, this area down here, I might just reduce my brush width, then Alt or Option click on a nearby area and just brush over and keep sampling and brushing like so. I do the same over here. Okay, just to subtly reduce some of the lines. Again, we'll do this one here and this one here. Okay, we can also do the same for the little scar by the side of the mouth here. So once again, I'll use a smaller brush, Alt or Option click, and just go over that. Okay, good. Right, that's enough for the retouching because I want a natural look, and also we don't want to remove all the lines in the model's face because it's full of character. So the next step is to cut the model out from the background. I'll just do a fit to screen, Command 0 or Control 0 if you're on Windows. And with cutouts, it's far easier to do this on one merged pixel layer. So what we'll do is if we hide the brightness and contrast adjustment, so it doesn't become part of the merge that we're about to do. And then with the high frequency layer selected, we go to Layer and Merge Visible. Okay, so that creates a merged pixel layer of all our retouching work. We can go ahead and turn these layers off now, and then turn brightness and contrast adjustment back on. Now, the easiest way to produce a cutout is to select the selection brush tool here. I'll just make the brush much bigger, and then we can just click, drag and start to create a selection, bearing in mind we're doing it on the merged pixel layer now. Okay, so I'll just create a rough selection. And here's a great little tip. Just to help you visualize the selection, you can enable the quick mask mode, which is up here, or you can also toggle it using the Q key, like so. And this just helps you visualize, with a bit more detail, exactly what you've got in the selection. So quite useful in certain circumstances. Okay. So next we want to refine this selection to matte all the hair area. And to do that, we jump into Refine up here. Okay, just bring that out of the way a little bit. So then once again, I'll increase the brush width like so, and I can just sort of click drag over all these difficult areas where the hair mingles with the background like so, and then release. Okay, and if some areas don't look quite right, perhaps they're taking away too much of the hair, I'll just reduce the brush width. We can switch across to foreground and then mark these areas as foreground, which basically means part of the selection, and then release. Okay, and we've got these little areas of the background peeking through here, so we'll switch back across to the matte brush. And bear in mind that every time you use the brush, it does take into account the brush width, so you can use a smaller width to get more refined results, like here. Okay, good. So we can also switch preview modes. We're in overlay at the moment. We could switch to a black and white preview, for example, or a transparent preview. We're actually going to add a pure white background to this image. So white matte is going to give us the most accurate preview. And now we can see what the image will look like if we put a white fill underneath it, which is to say pretty rough, especially around here and here. So to make the hair fuller and give it some more volume, we can increase ramp. So we'll try about 30% to begin. Okay, and then we can just slowly increase ramp until we get to a value that looks good without spilling too much of the background into the selection. So this looks about right. Perhaps I'll just take it down a tad. Okay, I'll stick with 61%, I reckon. Okay, finally then we can click apply and we get our refined selection. So we could have actually just created a mask straight from that dialog we had active, but no matter, we'll just, with the selection active, click to create a new mask layer from here. Okay, and then we can go to select and deselect to get rid of the marquee selection. Now you'll notice there's some background spill here, but don't worry too much, not just yet anyway. The next step is to add that white background. So we can go to Layer and New Fill Layer. Okay, and on the Layers panel here, we need to drag this fill underneath that pixel layer, like so. And as you can see, that background spill becomes much less of a problem. However, if we do want to tweak the mask after the fact, as it were, there's another little trick that we can pull, which is to add a curves adjustment here. And then we can just click drag. We don't actually have to child layer it into the mask. We could just leave the curves adjustment here. But just for organizational purposes, we will child layer it by click dragging it and offering it to the mask until we get that vertical blue bar, then release. Okay, then on the target drop down here, we need to change to alpha. All right, now if we click and add a node, you can see that we could easily pull the node downwards to remove some of that spill. And perhaps we could add another node up here if we wanted to control the tonal regions in more detail. But that will do, I think. So just a little tip for controlling the mask layer using a curves or levels adjustment there. Make sure you set the target to alpha before you actually start adding nodes. Okay, and another thing we're going to do is just lift the tonal region around the eyes slightly. So to do this, just make sure we've got the pixel layer selected. We're going to create a new empty pixel layer above that, and we'll set this pixel layer's blend mode to soft light. And the opacity wants to be very low, something like 10 or 12%. Okay, then we need to select the paintbrush tool. So I'll click hold on this tool flyout here, select the paintbrush tool, and it's still using that 50% opacity from when we recolored the chin down here. So I'll move this back up to 100. And also on my color palette here, we have that last color we sampled. I'm just going to drag all 3 sliders for a pure white. Okay, and then increase my brush width and just paint over these areas of the face. Like so. So if I just hide this layer, you can see the before and after. So it just lifts the eyes a bit and makes them stand out. All right, now is the point where I'm probably going to go back in and double click the brightness and contrast adjustment. So I'm going to tweak these settings to taste now. I might go a bit further with brightness and perhaps a bit further with contrast too. Okay, that looks about right to me. So we're almost finished. We're going to redden the lips slightly down here. Now, rather than painting in some colour by hand, we're going to take a slightly different approach. So I'll select the pixel layer because we want to add the adjustment we're going to add underneath the final brightness and contrast adjustment. I'll go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and HSL Adjustment. Okay, and I'll switch across to reds here. I'm going to drag saturation up slightly and luminosity down to darken the lips. Now, we're affecting the whole image at the moment. With this layer still selected, what I'll do is go to Layer and Invert. So an important point to note about Photo is that adjustment and filter layers have their own masks. If you're coming from other software, you might be looking for a separate mask that's clipped to the layer, but there's no such need. We just select the layer itself and we're automatically manipulating its mask. This means then we've got the paintbrush tool selected and we've got white selected, and it means we can just click, drag and brush in. I'll just reduce the brush width here. Brush in these areas to add them back to the mask. So the HSL adjustment is now only affecting the lips. And the benefit of this is that we can double click and jump back into the HSL adjustment at any point. So for example, if I move across to reds again, I could decide to give the model a slightly different shade of lipstick by dragging the hue shift slider. But that's perhaps a little garish for me, so I'll just set that back to 0. All right then, the final step is to apply some non-destructive sharpening. So what I'll do, because live filter layers automatically child layer into the layer you've got selected, is I will select the merged retouching pixel layer here. Then I'll go to Layer, New Live Filter Layer, and choose Unsharp Mask Filter. Okay, I'm going to pick a radius of 1 pixel, like so, and then for factor we'll try 2. Okay, so that gives us quite a sharp result over the entire image. But then what I'll do, as I did with the HSL adjustment, is I'll select Unsharp Mask here, then go to Layer and Invert. And then, as before, I'll just increase my brush width. I've got white as my color, so I'm adding back to the Unsharp Mask mask, as it were, and I can just click drag to just selectively sharpen the eyes. And with that, we are finished. I'll just cover exporting because we're working in a ROM RGB color space, and we need to convert an export to sRGB to ensure everyone else will see our image the same as we do. So especially if you're sharing over the web, this last step is really important. We go to File, Export. Let's pick JPEG, of course. And then under the More options here, we have Embed ICC Profile checked, which is fine. But under the drop-down here, we need to change to sRGB. There we go. And that's it. During the export process, Photo will automatically flatten and convert the document to sRGB and then export it, so we don't have to do anything else. And there we go. Bit of a lengthy one, but I hope that's just covered a myriad of techniques and tools that prove valuable for retouching workflows. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the other video tutorials.